Once again, the Queen of Consorts surprises us, but not in a good way.
Made lurid and false claims about the royal family, which played on her fears and fueled paranoia.
The room did not erupt when Queen Camilla made her demand. It became terrifyingly quiet. William stared across the table, uncertain whether he had heard correctly, while Charles refused to meet his son's eyes. The position being discussed was not ceremonial, decorative, or harmless. It belonged to Princess Anne, had been protected from interference for years, and carried authority few outsiders understood. Yet Camilla had just asked for it as though the decision were already hers. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Camilla leaned forward and stated her request without hesitation. During the restricted meeting at Buckingham Palace, she demanded that Charles appoint her controller of the sovereign's private household operations. That title meant the official responsible for schedules, access, discipline, and emergency palace decisions. The office had been reserved for Anne because the monarch's spouse was forbidden from controlling powers that could blur family loyalty with royal duty. William felt the meaning settle over him. Anne had carried that burden quietly for years, keeping private grudges and personal relationships away from constitutional decisions. She had never treated the position as a reward. She had treated it as a shield. Now Camilla was asking Charles to hand that shield to her. Camilla did not retreat. She argued that Anne's authority had become too rigid for a modern reign, then placed a list of duties on the table. William lowered the briefing card in his hand. He looked at Charles and asked whether his father had approved this before the meeting. The king removed his glasses, placed them beside his untouched tea, and admitted that his wife had raised the proposal privately. Charles's hesitation struck harder than a clear answer. William realized the monarch had considered removing his sister without letting her defend the role. Camilla insisted the transfer would create unity, yet her preparation revealed weeks of planning. Then William noticed the empty space beside the king. Anne's chair had been removed. She had not been invited to a meeting designed to decide her future. The absence changed everything. This was no longer an awkward discussion about modernization. It felt like a takeover arranged before the rightful holder could object. William rose and told Charles that Anne would hear the truth from them, not through whispers in palace corridors. Camilla objected, warning that confrontation would deepen the fracture. But the future king was already moving toward the door. When William finally found Anne, her reaction revealed something even more disturbing. She had known Camilla was coming for the position long before anyone had dared to warn him. This was never simply a fight over an office. For Anne, it was an attack on decades of service performed without applause. For Camilla, it represented the final barrier between being accepted beside the throne and controlling the world around it. And for William, it became a brutal test of loyalty. Defending his aunt could mean opposing his father. Remaining silent could leave the future king trapped inside a palace reshaped before he inherited it. William found Princess Anne alone, repairing the clasp of an old leather watch strap with steady hands. The quiet task suited her. She had built her royal life around discipline, privacy, and difficult service that rarely earned praise. The forbidden palace position had been entrusted to her, because she could make painful decisions without using authority to settle family grudges or reward personal loyalty. Anne stopped working when William explained Camilla's demand. Her hands became still, but her expression did not change. She had expected this moment. What hurt her was not the possibility of losing the office. It was knowing that Charles had discussed her removal in private, without asking why she had protected the role so fiercely. William sat across from his aunt and chose his words carefully. The prince expected anger, but the princess answered with sadness. She told him that she had protected her brother's reign from security failures, reckless guests, and private disputes that the king never knew had reached the palace doors. Charles had enjoyed the safety of her decisions, without seeing the cost of making them. Camilla saw the same office differently. The queen consort believed her title had given her status but not real control. She could stand beside the monarch at major events. Yet senior household officers still answered to Anne on private access and discipline. To her, The position represented proof that she was no longer being treated as Charles's companion, but as a permanent force within his reign. Anne then revealed, through her private conversation with William, that Camilla had already pressured her months earlier. The Queen had asked her to surrender control of private guest approvals and household disciplinary reviews. Those reviews were the internal process used to investigate staff conduct and protect restricted royal spaces. The trusted royal refused, warning that closeness to the king could never become a reason to control the people guarding him. Charles heard a different confession in his own private conversation with Camilla. She told him that Anne made her feel like a temporary guest inside her own home. The monarch listened as years of resentment finally surfaced, and for the first time he understood that his wife saw the office not only as power, but as protection from humiliation. Then Anne gave William the warning that changed everything. She said Camilla might not truly want the office itself. Hidden inside its authority was control over a sealed palace register recording every private visitor admitted during moments of royal crisis. And once William understood what that register contained, Camilla's demand no longer looked like a search for respect, it looked like an attempt to reach something Anne had deliberately locked away. Every palace confrontation has a moment that came before it, a quiet insult, a broken promise, or a decision no one could undo. In this case, the point of no return arrived 6 months earlier during a private reception at Windsor Castle. One guest appeared without proper clearance. One instruction was ignored. And when Anne stepped between Camilla and a locked royal corridor, the relationship between the two women changed forever. Anne had always understood the danger hidden inside small exceptions. As controller of private household operations, she maintained the emergency access register, approved restricted visitors, reviewed security exceptions, and could suspend household privileges when personal ties threatened royal rules. The register was the official record of who entered protected palace areas during sensitive moments. A false entry could hide influence, erase responsibility, and place the monarch's private decisions at risk. Camilla arrived at the reception with a longtime personal associate and expected no resistance. The Queen Consort moved toward the sovereign's sealed consultation corridor, a protected passage leading to rooms used for private discussions involving the king and senior royals. The guest had no clearance. When a security officer hesitated, Anne stepped in front of the closed door and ordered him not to unlock it. Camilla's face hardened. She demanded that Princess Anne move aside, insisting the visitor was present under her personal invitation. The princess refused. She told the Queen that marriage to Charles did not create authority over protected rooms, and friendship did not replace security approval. Then she escorted the associate back toward the main reception herself. Charles witnessed the final moments of the exchange, yet the king said nothing. He did not defend his wife, and he did not support his sister. Anne saw his silence as weakness because he allowed a serious breach to become a private family embarrassment. Camilla saw the same silence differently. To her, it meant the monarch would not stop her from answering that humiliation later. Anne discovered the deeper danger days afterward through an internal security review. Someone had attempted to amend the visitor record so the associate's access would appear pre-authorized. The princess blocked the change, preserved the original entry, and placed it inside a sealed internal file, a protected record that could not be altered without her approval. William listened as his aunt explained the incident during their private conversation. The prince finally understood why Camilla wanted the office so badly. Controlling Anne's position would allow the Queen Consort to reopen the register, revise the circumstances, and remove the only internal proof that she had tried to cross a forbidden boundary. Armed with that knowledge, William returned to Charles no longer as a shocked son seeking answers, but as the future king prepared to stop a transfer of power before the crown itself was compromised. William did not summon a committee. He did not send an aide. He entered the king's private morning room and asked Camilla to sit opposite him with no advisors, secretaries, or courtiers between them. Charles remained near the fireplace, trapped between his wife and his heir. Then the prince placed one question at the center of the room. Did she want Anne's responsibilities? Or did she want access to the record Anne had prevented her from changing? Camilla held his gaze and defended the transfer without hesitation. The Queen Consort argued that Anne's office had become a rival center of authority inside the palace. That office controlled private access, household discipline, and sensitive decisions that could affect the monarch's daily life. She claimed the princess used those powers without showing enough respect for the king's marriage, or the woman standing beside him. William kept his voice low. The restraint made every word more dangerous. He asked whether the request had truly begun after the Windsor corridor incident, when Anne stopped her guest from entering a protected area. Camilla's expression tightened. She accused the prince of accepting his aunt's account without understanding the humiliation she had suffered in front of staff and friends. Camilla leaned closer and struck back harder. She said Anne had spent years teaching palace officers to trust her judgment, while merely tolerating Charles's wife. The Queen argued that every refusal, every closed door, and every cold instruction had sent the same message: she could wear the title, but she would never be allowed to belong. William did not soften. He told her that respect could not be seized through an office designed to restrain personal influence. The future king then revealed, through a protected briefing summary shown to him by Anne, that he had seen the attempted amendment to the visitor record. He did not accuse Camilla of ordering the change, but he made one fact clear: giving her control over the same record would create an unacceptable conflict. Charles finally moved. The king admitted that Camilla had asked him to transfer the role before William or Anne could formally object. He believed a quick appointment might prevent another family confrontation. Instead, his confession proved the process had been designed to avoid scrutiny. The room changed at once. William stared at his father, stunned by the admission. Camilla remained silent, but the silence no longer protected her. It exposed how close the plan had come to succeeding. Then the door opened. Anne entered without waiting to be announced. She closed it behind her, turned the key, and faced Charles directly. The princess told him that no one would leave until he decided whether the position served the crown or his marriage. The battle was no longer hidden behind polite requests, and the next words spoken by the king would determine who truly held power inside his own household. For years, Charles had survived family disputes by waiting for emotion to cool. This time, delay was itself a decision. Anne stood before him with the calm of someone prepared to lose everything. Camilla waited for proof that her husband would finally place her above palace resistance. William watched them both, aware that the king's answer would define not only one office, but the boundary between private devotion and royal responsibility. Charles held the formal power, but even his authority had limits. As monarch, he could recommend changes to the royal household, the network of offices responsible for supporting the sovereign's public and private duties. Yet removing someone from a protected operational role required written reasons, consultation with the heir, and a review of possible conflicts. Those safeguards existed because personal loyalty could never be allowed to replace royal judgment. Anne carried power of a different kind. Senior security officers trusted her because she had never traded private information for influence. Household administrators respected her because she made hard decisions without protecting friends. William trusted his aunt because she had repeatedly defended the crown even when doing so left her isolated. Anne reached toward the small household insignia fixed to her jacket. The badge marked her authority within the protected office. She removed it, placed it on the table, and told Charles she would surrender the position immediately if he truly believed her judgment had become a danger to his reign. Charles stared at the insignia, but could not meet his sister's eyes. The king remembered the criticism she had absorbed to protect him, the warnings she had carried alone, and the crises she had stopped before they reached his door. Still, he asked whether she could ever work cooperatively with Camilla again. The question exposed what he wanted most: compromise without consequences. Anne heard the weakness beneath it. She told him cooperation required trust, and trust could not survive a secret attempt to remove her. Camilla remained still, but the Queen Consort understood that the argument was slipping away from emotion and moving toward duty. William finally drew the line. The prince stated that if the role passed to anyone connected to the Windsor record, he would formally oppose the appointment as heir. That meant he would use his position as the next in line to challenge the decision. The family dispute had become a warning about the future of the monarchy. Charles then admitted, through the private discussion taking place before them, that his secretary had already prepared a provisional transfer order at Camilla's request. The temporary document had not been signed, but its existence proved how close Anne had come to being removed without consultation. The king ordered the transfer withdrawn and announced a 24-hour review. Camilla rose without speaking. Before leaving, she turned to William and said he had just made Anne more powerful than the king's own wife. By nightfall, that accusation had spread through the palace, and the first consequences began falling on staff members who had believed Camilla's appointment was already guaranteed. The transfer had not been approved, yet parts of the palace had already begun behaving as though Anne's authority was finished. Invitations were redirected. Security questions were sent to Camilla's office. Staff members who had served the princess for years suddenly avoided her gaze. The attempted takeover had moved faster than the king's decision, revealing a network of quiet expectations and proving that someone had prepared the household for Anne's removal before William ever entered the room. Confusion spread first through two palace departments responsible for private access and household security. Anne's established procedures remained legally active, but Camilla's staff began circulating new approval channels under the phrase anticipated household restructuring. That meant they were preparing for a change before Charles had authorized it. One side treated the transfer as inevitable. The other feared that giving the king's wife control over security decisions would destroy the office's independence. Anne entered her operations room and immediately understood what had happened. Her regular chair had been moved away from the central desk. The princess said nothing at first. She returned it to its proper place, faced the gathered staff, and asked whether they still recognized her authority. Several answered quickly, others could not meet her eyes. The silence wounded her more than open rebellion. Anne had protected those officers from blame, defended their judgment, and carried responsibility when decisions became unpopular. Now some of them had abandoned her before a single order had been signed. The princess remained controlled, but the betrayal settled heavily beneath every word. Camilla faced rejection of her own. The queen consort learned through a private briefing from her chief aide that 3 senior officers had refused to accept provisional instructions from her team. She dismissed everyone from the room and sat alone. For the first time, she understood that a royal title could demand courtesy, but it could not create trust where confidence had already disappeared. William then received an internal communication from a senior administrator who feared the process had been corrupted. The message welcomed Camilla as the incoming operational controller. It had been drafted 12 hours before the restricted meeting, proving that someone had treated the result as settled before Anne or the prince had even been consulted. Charles read the same communication and reacted with anger. The king saw that it claimed the restructuring reflected his wishes, even though he had never approved the transfer. He closed the message folder and ordered an immediate inquiry into who had used his authority without permission. Night brought one final surprise. Camilla sent Anne a handwritten invitation asking her to meet alone in the old music room. No Charles, no William, no staff. Only the 2 women whose struggle had pushed the household toward collapse. What happened in that unguarded meeting did not erase the damage, but it exposed the wound beneath Camilla's ambition and gave Anne one final choice before the king delivered his verdict. Without the king beside her, Camilla sounded different. The polished certainty was gone. Without William defending her, Anne appeared equally exposed. The 2 women stood alone in the old music room. Surrounded by years of resentment, neither had ever spoken plainly. There were no aids to soften their words, and no protocol to hide behind. For the first time, the forbidden position stopped being an instrument of power and became what it had always represented: belonging, trust, and exclusion. Anne arrived first and remained standing. Camilla entered alone, closed the door, and placed the copied household insignia on top of the piano. The insignia was the small badge marking control of the protected office. It had been prepared for the proposed transfer, even though no final approval had been given. Camilla spoke before the silence became unbearable. The Queen Consort said she had spent years living inside royal residences, while still feeling that every corridor contained a boundary drawn by someone else. She attended ceremonies, stood beside Charles, and carried the weight of public judgment. Yet Anne's office represented the final circle from which she believed she remained excluded. Anne listened without interrupting. The princess then told her that exclusion from operational authority was not a personal punishment. The restrictions existed because affection for the monarch could never replace accountability. A spouse might love the king completely and still be the wrong person to control access, discipline, and private records. Camilla finally admitted the truth through their private conversation. Being stopped at Windsor in front of her guest had left her humiliated and furious. She wanted the position partly because she never wished to feel powerless before Anne again. The Queen's voice hardened as she described the shame, but it weakened when she admitted how deeply that moment had stayed with her. Anne did not excuse the ambition. She told Camilla that wounded pride had nearly become palace authority. The princess warned that pain could explain a decision, but it could not make the decision right. Camilla then denied ordering the visitor record to be altered. She revealed that a senior aide had acted independently, believing the change would protect her from embarrassment. The Queen accepted responsibility for creating an atmosphere in which the aide believed such loyalty would be rewarded. Anne offered one narrow path forward. She would ask Charles not to punish Camilla publicly if the claim was withdrawn, the aide was dismissed, and a permanent written boundary separated the Queen's personal household from protected crown operations. Camilla picked up the copied insignia and held it for several seconds. Then she placed it in Anne's hand. She agreed to withdraw, but insisted that Charles must hear the decision from her before the morning review. By sunrise, the palace expected another battle. Yet the announcement that emerged from the king's office transformed private surrender into a public test of dignity. The palace attempted to contain the crisis in a statement of only 4 paragraphs. It failed. Within minutes, broadcasters interrupted their schedules. Crowds gathered near Buckingham Palace, and the royal household's internal dispute became a national argument about power. Yet one detail dominated every headline. Camilla had withdrawn her request, while Anne remained in the protected position. What the public did not immediately understand was that the carefully worded announcement concealed a far more emotional settlement. Buckingham Palace confirmed that Princess Anne would remain controller of the sovereign's private household operations. The position was the protected office responsible for sensitive access, discipline, and emergency household decisions. The statement also declared that no monarch's spouse could receive the role in future, permanently separating private marriage from operational control. Camilla's withdrawal appeared calm on paper. The palace said the Queen Consort had stepped back after constructive family discussions. Those words hid everything that had brought the monarchy to the edge: the Windsor corridor confrontation, the attempted change to the visitor record, William's intervention, and the private surrender in the music room. William watched the coverage from Kensington Palace. A broadcaster praised Anne's decades of service and described her as the royal who had protected duty without demanding recognition. The prince felt relief, but it came with pain. He knew his relationship with Charles had changed, because he had been forced to defend a boundary his father had nearly surrendered. Camilla watched the same report alone. The Queen remained still as the presenter described her proposal as an attempt to expand personal influence inside the royal household. Before her photograph appeared beside Anne's, she turned off the television. Her request was over, but the public judgment had only begun. Rain did not stop the crowd outside Buckingham Palace. The evening edition of the Crown Chronicle arrived with 4 words across its front page: Anne holds the line. One woman lifted the newspaper above her head, and applause spread through the gathering. The sound was not a celebration of Camilla's defeat. It was recognition of the princess's service and the boundary she had refused to surrender. Charles then added one final sentence to the official announcement. The king personally approved words honoring his sister's unbroken judgment and exceptional duty. The tribute was not required by the settlement. It was his restrained public apology to the woman he had almost removed in private. Before the day ended, Charles summoned William, Camilla, and Anne for one final meeting. No proposal remained. No negotiation waited. Behind the palace doors, the four royals gathered once more, not to decide who had won, but to confront what the struggle had revealed about loyalty, marriage, and the future of the crown. The final meeting began with no documents on the table and no advisors waiting outside. Charles had already made the institutional decision. What remained was personal. Anne had kept the position. Camilla had withdrawn her claim. William had prevented a transfer he believed would weaken the crown. Yet victory offered none of them complete satisfaction. The crisis had ended, but only after exposing how easily love, resentment, and silence could place royal duty at risk. Charles spoke first and formally confirmed that Princess Anne would retain the protected palace position for as long as she remained willing to serve. The office controlled sensitive access, emergency household decisions, and private security records. Future occupants would have to remain independent from the monarch's spouse, personal friendships, and private household influence. The king had finally drawn the boundary he should have protected from the beginning. Charles then introduced a second safeguard. The visitor register would now require dual authorization from Anne and William before any entry could be changed. That meant two trusted royals had to approve every correction involving restricted access. No single household office would ever again possess enough control to rewrite a sensitive record without review. Charles turned toward his sister and admitted the truth. The monarch told Anne that considering the transfer without consulting her had been a failure of loyalty. She did not embrace him. She did not offer easy forgiveness. The princess returned the household insignia to her jacket and told her brother that trust would now have to be rebuilt through actions, not apologies. William then faced Camilla. The prince acknowledged that her sense of exclusion had been real and painful, but he told the queen consort that pain could not justify claiming authority created to protect the monarchy from personal pressure. She accepted his judgment without argument, knowing the struggle had already revealed too much. Camilla confirmed through the private family conversation that the senior aide connected to the altered Windsor record had been dismissed. She also promised that the original entry would remain untouched. The Queen's admission closed the final path through which the past could have been rewritten. Anne refused to demand public humiliation or the removal of Camilla's ceremonial privileges. The princess understood that revenge would only create another royal spectacle. By choosing restraint, she proved exactly why she had been trusted with the office. The verdict was complete. Camilla's attempt had failed because authority could not become compensation for emotional exclusion. William emerged as an heir willing to challenge even his father when royal safeguards were threatened. Charles learned that silence could become complicity. Anne preserved something greater than a position, the principle that duty must remain stronger than marriage, resentment, or ambition. And when Anne left the room with the insignia still fixed above her heart, the palace understood the verdict completely. Camilla stood beside the throne, but the authority protecting the crown remained with the woman who had never asked to be powerful, only trusted. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.